Welcome to another CEO Wisdom podcast brought to you by podpire.com. If you want to start, scale, be invited to podcast. Today we have Eric Meller with us. I'm quite excited because he apparently has been to Oaxaca, where I am, and that's where the social quote unquote journey started. Eric has quite the interesting background as well. So very excited to get into it today. Eric, can you tell us a bit more about yourself and about Marsh Creek Social Works?
Yes, and Charles, thank you so much for having me on today. It's a pleasure to get to know you and talk a little bit more about Oaxaca, which is where my social journey started. So I'm Eric Miller. I'm the CEO and founder of Marsh Creek Social Works. We are a philanthropy consultancy firm. We help nonprofits, foundations, and companies on their philanthropic and corporate social responsibility journey. We do that by helping them on the operational strategy side. We also provide accounting and financial services so they can focus on their mission and their operations. And we also offer impact investing to allow folks to have access to an area of impact that they may not normally have time or capacity for. So I'm proud to say that Marsh Creek Social Works, we're about 3 years old. And it is my second career. So my first career, I was in the United States Army as an intelligence officer. I served 20 years in a variety of locations in the United States. I was part of the Iraq events and the early on portions of that war. I have a lot of time in South Korea and a lot of time in the Washington, D.C. area working at upper echelons of the Pentagon and Congress.
How was that career? Like, let's talk about that career. Like, what were the highlights of it and challenges that you face and how you resolve these?
Gosh, Charles, I talk, my wife and I'm dual military. My wife is still on active duty in the Army. And, we talk about the landscape for our kids and when we came out of college versus what it is today. And, back then in the late 90s, right, there weren't jobs around the corner. Not everybody was hiring. You didn't know how are you going to pay for college? What are you going to do? And I came from an Army family. My father served in Vietnam and my mother worked for the Department of Defense. And I knew I wanted this to serve, right? Somehow I needed to serve my country. And so, yeah, I'll sign up for 4 years. I just want to go see the world. So there I was in a listening post in South Korea on 9/11. And at that point, the world changed and 4 years turned into 20. So navigating the change of America from pre-9/11 to post-9/11, that was a big change. The whole world has kind of changed from there. I think we've seen a couple other, changes in just American history and world history since then. I think I had some unique opportunities based upon my background, just being stubborn and aggressive about where I wanted to go. The opportunity, of course, to go forward and fight and defend, the people of Iraq in a war. That was certainly very building and formative, right, and determining who I would become and some of the skill sets I would bring. A great opportunity to come back and work in Congress as an Army fellow at the echelons of understanding how national security policy can play into everyday lives for folks. Transferring that into working in the intelligence community and working at some of the agencies trying to protect America and protect freedom wherever it is in the world. So there were some highlights in there. I like to say that my biggest success was meeting my wife. We met in service in Korea. And so, we've been married for almost 20 years now. So I consider that the most highlight, right, of my Army career.
Certainly a good one. What are tricky situations you got into while in Iraq and how did you get yourself and your team out of it?
Oh, lots of times in Iraq were tricky. I was there as part of the initial invasion from 2003 to 2004. So it's a very different theater than, 2008, 2009, 2010, during the surge and all of those things. We didn't really know what we didn't know, trying to figure out, are there chemical weapons here? Are there weapons of mass destruction? How do you negotiate with a populace? We're not trained to do nation building, but yet here we are working with farmers. A lot of the time it was just being creative, and I think kind of in the pre-prep, we were kind of talked about creativity and entrepreneurship. And some of that, we were doing on the ground. This is the year after post-Saddam, there's no governments. And my team and I are looking around, how do we come to some side kind of government here, right? Some sort of structural body. So, my team, we kind of created, let's do a census, which was a novel concept. Let's just see who the people are. And then we can try to, you would call it gerrymandering if it was in the United States, but how do you create some kind of where groups come together that they're not going to start fighting the minute they get in the meeting group? How do we get groups together where they can work together? So some super interesting things. And, we were fortunate to always have the support of our leadership. We wanted to be creative. Hey, let's try this. And they're like, what's the worst that can happen? It doesn't work. Well, then we'll try something else. And so that was very, very fortunate and proved to be very helpful in our cause.
The intelligence part, any comments on what happened in Israel not so long ago? And because, 9/11 was very tough to predict as well. The intelligence was there. Apparently, we lack creativity in interpreting that and protecting citizens from what happened. So any comments on what happened there and what you feel has not been executed the correct way from an intelligence perspective?
I have left my intelligence days in security a few years ago, so I certainly am not well placed to know anything more than what you can see. I would say that I think, like all of us, we were shocked that 9/11 happened. There's a lot of work that was done on the backside. In fact, I wrote during my career, Army career, I wrote papers, right, on some of the intelligence failures. And I would say, yes, there were intelligence failures, but there's a saying in the Army that when something goes well, it's called an operations planning success. When it goes poorly, it's an intelligence failure. And so I push back a little bit when I hear, oh, this was an intelligence failure. To some degree, there probably was something that was missed in the recent the attack in Israel. But we cannot, it is probably unfair to cast all of that failure on one discipline within warfighting. There were probably many other things that all potentially contributed to missing that. And as much money and as much as we spend on training our intelligence apparatus across the world, nothing is foolproof, right? As we've seen. And that's the case in government. That's the case in business as well, right? You can have all the business analytics and business intelligence, but still companies make missteps, nonprofits makes missteps. We don't call them intelligence failures, right? We just call them, you have a planning misstep, right? Or things happen, surprises in business.
Do you feel that the world is in good hands from an intelligence perspective? Sometimes you want to gain more control over that and come back to your old intelligence career?
Sometimes I feel like in some respects, I sleep better at night, not knowing what perhaps I used to know. In other respects, I sleep worse. My wife is still in that field, so I kind of trust that she's doing her part, and so I trust in my wife. I've tried to shift to other aspects. I say I spent my first career in service to nation, and now I spend my second career in service to people. And so really try to focus on, the rest of us outside the intelligence discipline, helping service our communities, right? Our people, where we are, where we work, and where we live.
How did that shift occur in you?
I would say this kind of going back to my connection to Oaxaca. So it started not far into my Army career. A good friend of a good family friend, had started a nonprofit down in Oaxaca called Puente a la Salud Comunitaria. The goal of that nonprofit was to reintroduce amaranth as a super grain into the diet of the local community, as opposed to corn, which is not as nutritious. And so her nonprofit was trying to teach farmers how to plant and grow amaranth, and families how to use it in their cooking. And it was really my first exposure to field operations for a nonprofit. And so we went down to Oaxaca, stayed with our friend, visited this nonprofit, and I was blown away. And I said, someday I want to return and I want to be in this space, because I'll get up at 4 a.m. and you don't even have to pay me. And I want to help, right? Do this because I believe in it. And so for the rest of my Army career, I had my eye on that. And so there were things I did, whether it was additional schooling, additional research, writing papers, speaking on how to better enable the social sector. And I was able to kind of figure out how to take all of the strategy and the planning and the operational skill sets that I had learned from the Army. How do I apply that to the nonprofit and the social sector, places where that perhaps that skill set isn't as resident as strongly as it is within the military? So how do we kind of leverage these pieces? And so as I transitioned out of the military in 2020, I spent some time with another philanthropy consultancy firm and really kind of built Marsh Creek in their image of how do we apply this kind of operational and planning purview to helping philanthropy in all of its forms.
Tell us about Marsh Creek. What do you guys do precisely nowadays?
So we try to partner with companies and foundations and nonprofits to see how we can help them. So let's give an example. So a lot of times a company may have a foundation, a corporate foundation, or maybe they want to start a foundation. So in the instance where a company has started a foundation, it was probably created a few years ago. They did it because there were some tax advantages, there were some giving advantages, but philanthropy has really advanced in a lot of different ways that you can connect your activities to not only your corporate purpose, but also to your people and the communities in which you work. And so for some, we will look at a foundation that has been operating for 10 years, and we'll do a little bit of business analytics. Here's how you set up, here's how your structures, here's how you funded. Perhaps that hasn't changed in 5 to 7 years, but everything else has changed. Here is a whole list, a menu of things that you could do to, 1, increase your return on impact, to 2, better connect your employees to the giving that you're doing, better get employee engagement, and better impact the communities that you're trying to do. So we try to work with them and say, here's all these things, and now we can help you implement them if you want to. Another thing is sometimes we like to work with younger companies, right, that aren't yet that developed, and say, we know you want to have a relationship with your community. Here's what that looks like. You can write checks and outfit the local baseball team with uniforms, okay? Or you could look at creating campaigns. You could get your employees involved. You could run scholarship programs. You could set up different funds. You can do all of these different things. We try to walk them through the universe of activities, of ways to do that.
And how much do they pay you for that? Let's say I'm a company, I want to develop my nonprofit aspect. Like what do I need to pay you?
So I've done it both, where we'll do a retainer basis, so it depends on the level of service, right? For some amount of money per month, we will dedicate 5 hours a week, 10 hours a week, whatever the needs are, we can be flexible. So it's almost a retainer, it's a service contract. Other projects are more term-based, right? Or they're project-based. So for $5,000, we need your help to help run this event, right? For $20,000, we would like you to help set up this program. For $100,000, we would like you to work with us for 2 years to build out a strategic plan and then operationalize that through all facets of our business. So it really just kind of turns on the scale and the scope. So I would say it varies. And although we do have paying clients to run the business, there are also some pro bono work that we do. Nonprofits, you've had a couple of different guests on your podcast before that talk about, nonprofits, the traditional run on a shoestring budget. That's not true for all nonprofits, but we do take some nonprofits under our wings and say, hey, we're going to help you because we believe in you. We're going to do this work. We're not going to take any money. We just want you to be successful, and we think we can help you do that. And so we try to keep a workload of a couple of pro bono nonprofits to work with us, just so we can continue to have impact. And you also, when you work for companies and large foundations for a while, sometimes it's good to go back to the nonprofit space and just rub elbows again and get back in the trenches, right? And just relive it, because the field changes. The field changes every so often. And so just kind of remaining current with the challenges that nonprofits are facing is super helpful.
Right. And how do you get your new clients? What's your strategy to reach to whom exactly?
You say junior clients or any clients?
Your first start with your ICP, your ideal customer persona, and then how do you reach out to them?
So that is the challenge. And I tell our team that the best way to get a client is to have a client, right? So We're very fortunate to partner with, so Arabella Advisors is the philanthropy company that I mentored with and that I did a fellowship with as I was transitioning out. I'm very fortunate to continue to partner with them to leverage the networks that they have and the opportunities, and whenever I can, partner on projects. From there, it's largely word of mouth. Charles, we've got a website, we've got Instagram, we've got Twitter. I have never gotten a client lead by somebody emailing me, right? You have these things to establish credibility if folks look for you and to have kind of a facing page. But philanthropy is a personal business, and it's a personal endeavor. And so when a company or a foundation wants to engage with a philanthropic consultancy, I also want it to be personal. And so we have never picked up a client that we weren't referred to or we weren't connected to by some other individual. So because I think of our status, so most of our team are veterans ourselves of different services. I would tell you that I don't think veterans writ large are highly represented across philanthropy. They are in nonprofits on the military service organization and the veterans service organization side, but outside of that, it gets a little thin. And so we try to bridge that gap. We try to bring philanthropy to the military and defense sector space, and we try to bring that veteran perspective to non-defense companies that nonetheless have veterans in their employees, have veterans in their communities, have wounded warriors that they want to assist. And we kind of speak this common language. And so we try to bring that discipline and skill set and that connectivity to companies that traditionally wouldn't reach out into those areas.
Right. And what is your growth strategy? Because I'm assuming you're a nonprofit as well, or are you for profit?
No, we are a for-profit. We do have a foundation arm, but we use that as almost exclusively as a grant writing organization.
Got it. So for profit, for nonprofits, what is your growth plan? Just keep on doing better work and getting more referrals. What's your plan for the next couple of years?
Yeah, our strategy is to grow slowly and organically. So I have seen the life cycle, and so you always want one more. I want one more client. I just want one more employee. But one of our greatest advantages is that we are bespoke to our clients, and we don't want to get too big where we can't remain agile and speed. And so I find we can tailor and we can usually outpace competitors with delivering ideas and products and services because we are super small and we're super flat. And so we try to remain that way. And now we know once you grow to a certain amount, once you have two pizzas can't feed your team, then that all starts to shift, and we are pushing that away as far as we can. So I think we're not in for quick win clients. We like clients that come with us and stay with us because we like to grow with you. So our strategy is to grow slowly over time with the right client set.
Right. How do you want to finish this year up? There's 2 months remaining, and time is kind of flying, and the economy has not been the best this year. So what are your top goals as a CEO to finish up this year?
Yeah, so to finish up this year, so we have some of our projects will be closing down. The nature of philanthropy projects, there's a big ramp up in February. People want to get done by June. They ramp up after Labor Day, and they want to wrap up again, right, by the holidays. A lot of foundations take most of December off, right? Nonprofits can't quite do that, but foundations like to take time off. So we want to close up by the end of November, wrap up our big projects, and then we'll really want to give our folks downtime. So December is really kind of a downtime. We'll use it for completing an impact report, doing our planning for next year, because we think next year will be super busy. I think the political cycle will drive a lot of giving as well, just because it's an election year. It's going to be kind of big for donors across the board. So I think we're going to posture and kind of rest up We're in the process of applying to become a B Corp certified, which is a big lift. And so I think we'll try to get that certification, all of our documentation done. So really for the rest of the year, it is a administrative cleanup, a planning for next year, and then giving our folks some downtime to rest for what we think will be a big 24.
And where can people find out more about you, Eric?
Well, the best place is our website, which is www.marshcreeksocialworks.com. There's a connect to us link. I'm available on LinkedIn. All of our team members are on LinkedIn, so they can connect to us individually on LinkedIn or our webpage. That's the best place to find us.
I'm Charles Cormier, host. That was another CEO Wisdom Podcast.com.